If you traveled 250 million years into the past, you'd be witnessing the dawn of dinosaurs. One of the leading theories is that dinosaurs evolved from a species known as archosaurs. These were the dominant reptiles that appeared during the late Permian period. To some, they may even look like dinosaurs, and that's because they were ancestors to these incredible creatures. Over time, the archosaurs split up into two groups. One of these groups led to crocodiles, and the other led to dinosaurs, which continued evolving into thousands of different species. One of the main traits they eventually gained was their bipedal abilities. Early dinosaurs began to walk on two legs, freeing their front limbs for other uses like grabbing food and defending themselves. And that's just the start of their evolutionary journey. Let's travel back in time, 250 million years ago, and witness the history of dinosaurs in 10 minutes. Triassic period. As you enter this new era, you'll notice that the dinosaurs running around look pretty different from what you're used to seeing. One of the earliest dinosaurs that emerged from the archosaurs was the Eoraptor. This little guy was about the size of a dog, barely 1 meter tall and weighing in at a meager 10 kilograms. You know, we typically think of dinosaurs as these massive creatures, but it'd be a couple million more years before that started to happen. We'll check in to see how those dinos are growing in size as we travel through time. But for now, let's see what's happening to Earth. During the Triassic period, the supercontinent Pangaea starts to fragment, slowly altering global climates and ecosystems. The climate was generally hot and dry, and there were no polar ice caps, creating a stark contrast to what you're typically used to in modern-day Earth. The vegetation was also very different and was crucial for the survival and evolution of dinosaurs. The plants have different characteristics as well. Some are tough, some nutritious, and others potentially poisonous. Each one of them will influence the dietary and adaptive strategies of different dinosaur species. Speaking of which, what are some other dinosaurs doing during this time? Weighing in at about 23 kilograms and 1 meter tall, we have the Coelophysis. It was a little bit bigger than the Eoraptor, but that didn't stop it from being a fast and agile predator that likely preyed on smaller animals. Now, the Herrerasaurus was slightly taller at about 1.1 meters, but was a lot heavier at about 350 kilograms. Then we have the Plateosaurus. Now this guy is way bigger than me. It stood tall at about 3 meters and weighed up to 4,000 kilograms. This was one of the earliest examples of how big dinosaurs could grow. But wait, they get even bigger than this. Despite their impressive forms, dinosaurs weren't the dominant creatures during the Triassic. They had to share their environments with many other organisms, all vying for survival in the diverse ecosystems. This was the case until the Triassic period would experience a great extinction event. This was likely caused by massive volcanic activity, climate change, and potentially even some small asteroid impacts. This will have a significant effect on life on Earth and lead to the extinction of numerous species. But it wasn't all bad, especially for our dinosaurs. This moment set the stage to bring new opportunities to these species, leading to them dominating the Earth. Jurassic period. Now, instead of dinosaurs simply surviving, this is where they thrive. Over the millions of years, different species have been evolving, and dinosaurs are now the rulers of the Earth. They spread across continents, dominating the lush forests and arid deserts. Occupying these areas were some massive dinosaurs, ones that you're probably a lot more familiar with. We have the Stegosaurus, Brachiosaurus, and Allosaurus. These were some of the largest creatures ever to walk the Earth. But you'd quickly notice that it wasn't just these massive beasts that were roaming around. This era also saw the evolution of theropods. These were smaller dinosaurs that had more of a bird-like form. One of the most famous was the Archaeopteryx. It was kind of like a mix between a dinosaur and a bird, with feathers and wings, but also with bony teeth and a tail. The Archaeopteryx was a crucial link between birds and dinosaurs. If you wait about 100 million more years, they'll evolve into the birds we know today. Oh, wait, is that a spoiler? After 56 million years, the Jurassic period comes to an end. This was after yet another extinction event happened. Luckily, this one is more minor. However, due to climate change, volcanic activity, and sea levels changing, some species are going extinct. This, once again, changes the landscape as the dinosaurs enter their final era. Cretaceous period. Okay, we've now entered the Cretaceous period, and as we've been traveling through these millions of years, you may have noticed something's missing. Right, one of the dinosaurs' biggest stars hasn't appeared yet. Say hello to the Tyrannosaurus Rex. The T-Rex was a massive beast. It was 3.7 meters tall and 12 meters long. Not only that, but it was a whopping 9 tons. Equipped with a powerful jaw and incredibly sharp teeth, the T-Rex dominated the Cretaceous kingdom. It was one of the most dominant predators history has ever seen. This colossal beast wasn't just scavenging leftovers, it was an active hunter, stalking its prey with keen eyesight and a heightened sense of smell. Among its favorite meals were the sizable herbivores like the Edmontosaurus. But the T-Rex didn't stop there. It would take on formidable opponents like the Triceratops and even other smaller theropods if the opportunity arose. With its powerful jaws filled with 12-inch teeth and its strong hind limbs that allowed it to run at speeds of up to 40 kilometers per hour, the T-Rex was a master of the hunt. But this period wasn't just filled with massive beasts like the T-Rex. Look around and you'll also notice even more feathered dinosaurs in the Cretaceous period. One of them being the Velociraptor. Now, you typically see them portrayed like this with no feathers, but evidence suggests that these creatures were quite feathered. Now, the feathers weren't necessarily used for flying, more for warmth and stability. And this one is the Microraptor. Now, unlike the Velociraptor, its feathers likely were used for flight, giving us crucial insight into the evolution of birds. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, Pangaea was breaking up and forming into the continents we know today. But because of this, some dinosaurs were forced to migrate and separate into different areas of the world. These dinosaurs had to adapt to their new environments, potentially changing the course of their evolution. But none of this matters when we consider what happens next. 66 million years ago, an asteroid as big as Mount Everest was headed on a deadly collision course with Earth. The impact was so devastating that it wiped out the most gigantic, deadliest reptiles to ever roam our planet. But the dinosaurs didn't just die from one big boom. No, they faced a slow, agonizing end. How did this extinction event cause the largest tsunami Earth has ever seen? And what exactly happened after the big reptiles were gone? Hold on tight, we're taking you on the most epic and deadly trip of your life. This dinosaur-ending asteroid is terrifying. Not only was it about 10 kilometers in diameter, but it also traveled incredibly fast, between 10 and 30 kilometers per second. At this point, it was a blazing fireball. As it hurtled down to Earth, the air in front of it was compressing and heating up to unimaginably hot temperatures. Just before the impact, the asteroid could have been as hot as the surface of the sun. Once it entered our atmosphere, it only took this massive space rock a few seconds to reach Earth's surface and alter the course of life forever. As the asteroid slammed into Earth off the coast of where Mexico is now, it sent huge amounts of debris up into the air. The shocking blast wave killed everything in its way. And from here, it was only getting worse. This powerful blast ejected bits of the Earth's surface into the atmosphere. And minutes later, scorching hot pieces of glass and rock rained back down. Some of the debris reacted with the atmosphere, causing acid rain that would last for years. The land was burning. The fires caused by this devastating impact spread across the continent like literal wildfire, killing more and more life along the way. And then, just when you thought the apocalyptic scenario couldn't get any more intense, well, it did. The impact of the asteroid hitting Earth was so powerful that it sent shockwaves through the planet. And all that energy had to go somewhere. Cue the mega tsunami. A wall of water over 10 meters high raced across the ocean. This wasn't your regular tsunami. It was a staggering 30,000 times more powerful than anything you see today. As this monstrous wave spread across the North Atlantic and South Pacific, coastlines didn't stand a chance. The wave hit with such force that it destroyed and reshaped the continent. If you were there to witness this apocalyptic destruction, well, you wouldn't survive any of it. But some dinosaurs did. Yeah, the ones further away from ground zero weren't immediately obliterated by the impact. They weren't incinerated by the resulting infernos, and they managed to avoid being swept away by the mega tsunami. But still, their fate was sealed. As the dust began to settle, it was the start of a nuclear winter. Even though it wasn't nuclear weapons that caused it, the effect was the same. The massive amount of debris in the air blocked the sunlight for months, maybe even years. Earth suddenly became a cold, dark place, and the dinos weren't ready for it. As temperatures plummeted and fires released enormous amounts of greenhouse gases, the climate changed dramatically. Plants weren't able to perform photosynthesis, and most of them started to die out. This disrupted the food chain and starved many of the animals that survived the impact. And remember the acid rain? It lasted for several years, causing more devastation to the ecosystems. The oceans became too acidic for marine life. Most ocean species didn't have the time to adapt to such a drastic change. These prolonged harsh conditions, together with the initial blast, pushed about 75% of Earth's life to extinction. The good news is that this included the horrifying T-Rex. Yeah, as much as I feel bad for this guy, I'm happy he's not running around today. When the last of the dinosaurs breathed their last breath, Earth became an empty, devastated place, cold and acidic. So when did things get back to normal? Yeah, well, here's the thing. They didn't. Not dinosaur era normal, anyway. Earth didn't rebuild after that. It reinvented itself. 1,000 years later, the planet was recovering from the post-apocalyptic winter. It was still cold and food was still scarce, but life was ready to make a comeback. In this new wild world, a few furry little critters were sprinting around. Among the first plants to reappear after the impact were ferns. They really hit it off well after the disaster. 100,000 years later, Earth began to get a little more lively. Creatures about the size of raccoons were repopulating the continents. And the oceans were once again teeming with life. Fast forward about 10 million years and Earth had finally restored its biodiversity. Only it wasn't the same Earth as it used to be. Now it was the age of mammals. Yeah, after the dinosaurs checked out, mammals were on fire. Yeah, not literally, of course. Mammals, together with birds and flowering plants, were rocking the planet. Yeah, Earth never got back to its old self. After the last dinosaur died, it took our planet millions of years to bounce back in a new way. But don't get me wrong, this world was still pretty terrifying. It had beasts like Paraceratherium roaming the land and megalodons raining terror in the oceans. Yeah, it's really for the best that most of these creatures aren't around these days. You wouldn't want to face a meg when you're out there swimming in the ocean. You might have heard that all dinosaurs were wiped out 65 million years ago when a 15-kilometer wide asteroid crashed into Earth and caused a mass extinction event. But that is entirely false. One species of dinosaur, theropods, managed to survive. They had feathers and hollow bones, and most of them could fly, meaning they could rise above the blast and survive the aftermath. And now, many scientists believe that these theropod dinosaurs managed to evolve into birds. So technically, dinosaurs are still alive and with us today. But that's not the only thing you were lied to about dinosaurs. From non-existent species to T-Rex's eyesight, there are many myths and misconceptions about the Mesozoic era. One of the craziest is that dinosaurs were all green, scary monsters. In fact, many of them likely had feathers. Theropods would have had feathers for a variety of reasons, from giving them warmth to helping some aviation-based dinos to fly. And that's not all. Dinosaurs were a variety of colors. Yeah, some fossils have preserved pigments, showing that not all dinosaurs were brown, black, or green. They may have had many vibrant colors. Some of them may even have had specific camouflage, depending on their environment. And they weren't all scaly and slimy either. Different dino species would have different textures to their skin. I want to know if any of them were fluffy. Now, when you think of dinosaurs, you probably think that they were all massive. The T-Rex had a length of 12 meters, and the long-necked Brachiosaurus was up to 13 meters tall. But that wasn't the case for all dinosaurs. Contrary to popular belief, not all dinosaurs were giants. In fact, many of them were pretty small. Some were even the size of birds that we have today. Haha, look at that one. One small dinosaur was the Microraptor. This little guy was about the size of a crow. He even had wings and feathers, making him look like a bird. Dinos are typically portrayed as slow-moving, cold-blooded reptiles, but this isn't totally accurate. Scientists have recently discovered that dinosaurs weren't all cold-blooded like we thought. But that doesn't mean that they were all warm-blooded. It's a bit more complicated. Dinosaurs may have had a metabolic system known as mesothermic. This means they were somewhere between cold and warm-blooded. Being mesothermic allows animals to generate some internal heat, just not as much as a warm-blooded animal would. Dinosaurs with feathers may have been warm-blooded. Feathers usually suggest warm-blooded. Now, of course, there were thousands of species of dinosaurs, so sure, many of them may have been cold-blooded, but there were also warm-blooded and mesothermic dinosaurs. The Brontosaurus is one of the most iconic dinosaurs ever. With its long neck and tail, it's probably one of the first dinosaurs you think of. But did you know that these creatures almost didn't exist? Yeah, in the 19th century, the Brontosaurus was accidentally classified as the Apatosaurus, a species with similar traits. It wasn't until 2015, after years of research, that the Brontosaurus was reclassified as its own dinosaur. Kind of like how Pluto comes and goes as a planet, the dinosaur community seems to have some sort of trouble making up their mind on the validity of the name Brontosaurus. Movies like Jurassic Park often show the Tyrannosaurus Rex as one of the most deadly predators, destroying everything in its path. The only catch? They can only see prey if it moves. Yeah, that's also completely false. To make the T-Rex even more terrifying, they had incredible vision and were easily able to see prey that stood still. Since the T-Rex's eyes were positioned forward on its head, it had binocular vision. It could easily judge distances and see objects in 3 dimensions, similar to how humans see. Research suggests that the T-Rex might have had better eyesight than modern-day birds because it had such large optic nerves. It's easy to forget, but dinosaurs didn't all live simultaneously. The Mesozoic era, also known as the Age of Dinosaurs, spanned over 180 million years. There were 3 distinct periods: Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous. And within these 3 periods, different species were unique to the specific era. Within 180 million years, some dinosaurs evolved into new forms, and some species went extinct. Some of the most iconic dinosaurs, like the Stegosaurus and T-Rex, never actually coexisted. They lived in entirely different time periods, tens of millions of years apart. Also, the T-Rex is often shown as a Godzilla-like creature that can stand upright, but how accurate is this? Well, turns out it's a total misconception based on early artists' renderings. Paleontologists have since found that the T-Rex had a more horizontal posture. Its tail was held up off the ground, and its body was balanced over the hips. The upright stance of the T-Rex that we typically see is fun for Hollywood, but it would be unstable and impractical for the dinosaur to move around freely. When fossils are dug up, the shrink wrap method is often used to portray how the dinosaurs looked. This is where the skin and features are drawn tightly against the skeleton. The technique has led to some iconic dinosaur portrayals, but is incredibly inaccurate when it comes to how these dinosaurs actually looked. The problem is that it doesn't account for any muscles, fat, or any other soft tissues that the dinosaur had. Luckily, this method is considered outdated. Paleontologists now account for the muscles and the fat that the dinosaurs were likely packing on. They make comparisons with modern animals to find where muscle would typically be attached to the bone. This has led to a more realistic appearance for the dinosaurs. Paleontologists have identified over 1,000 different species of dinosaurs, but there are tons more left to discover. Literally. The numbers vary, but some research suggests we've only found about 30% of dinosaur species. And some we may never find due to gaps in the fossil record. Depending on where a species lived, they may have never been fossilized due to their environment. But many more will be discovered. On average, paleontologists discover about 50 new dinosaur species every year. Dinosaurs probably didn't sound anything like this. In fact, we really have no idea what they sounded like. Fossilization rarely preserves the soft tissues like vocal cords, and that makes it challenging for paleontologists to determine the exact sounds dinosaurs made. But it's unlikely they made these massive roars. Scientists can make an educated guess that dinos sounded closer to birds and crocodiles since they're the closest living relatives of dinosaurs. Researchers have created models based on fossilized skulls. The models suggest that the dinosaurs may have made low-frequency rumbles or bird-like calls. Regardless of what they sounded like exactly, the scientific community agrees that they didn't sound like this. So, is it possible that one day we'll be able to clone dinosaur DNA and build our very own Jurassic Park? Well, as cool as that may be, it's never gonna happen. Since DNA degrades over time, the chance of finding intact dino DNA is, well, basically zero. And even if some were found, extracting the DNA without any contamination or deterioration would be incredibly difficult. Now, what if the DNA was preserved in amber, similar to the movie? Well, that's also highly unlikely, since DNA can't survive for tens of millions of years inside of amber. Millions of years ago, Earth looked very different. All the continents were fused into one. teeming with life, both beautiful and terrifying. When you think of prehistoric times, you might picture a T-Rex rampaging through the jungle with its razor-sharp teeth. But even before the dinosaurs, there were other giant creatures ruling the Earth. Yeah, welcome to the Permian period. This epoch started 300 million years ago. Back then, our planet had one supercontinent, Pangaea, surrounded by a world ocean called Pangaea. The Permian period began at the end of an ice age when temperatures were much cooler than today. Then, during early Permian days, Earth warmed to a lush environment with a diversity of plants and a rapid evolution of insect and animal life. Only, as you probably know, everything is ever-changing on our blue marble. Over the next 50 million years, Earth kept growing hotter and drier. Eventually, the most deadly event in the history of our planet wiped out nearly everything that ever lived here. Scientists call this event the Great Dying, and it was the most catastrophic mass extinction event the Earth has ever seen. And the Earth has seen 5 of them. But before we get to all this doom and gloom, let me take you on an epic journey back in time. Here in the Permian period, some of the most incredible species that roamed our young planet are about to emerge. If you could time travel nearly 300 million years into the past, you'd land smack dab in the middle of the supercontinent Pangaea. Earth's smaller continents would have just finished colliding with each other to form this enormous landmass, taking up 1/3 of the planet's surface. There was likely less oxygen in the air than there is now, but you still might be able to breathe. Oh, and bring a jacket because it would likely be chilly, with some areas averaging no more than a brisk 4 degrees Celsius. But don't worry, things will soon start heating up. By the end of the early Permian, the Ice Age was on its way out and Pangaea was becoming a lush world. Plants and animals started to thrive. This was a volcanic world. Violent eruptions changed the climate, shaped the landscape, and paved the way for evolution. When giant swamp forests began drying out, plant life had to adapt, and so, 290 million years ago, Earth saw the very first seed-bearing plants called gymnosperms. These plants carried seeds on their cones, and they spread across the supercontinent like wildfire. The ancient evergreen forest of the early Permian was hiding something familiar. Just like today, you could find cicadas and beetles piercing and sucking on the plants, and the cutest of them all? Cockroaches. Only, these weren't the cockroaches you know today. These prehistoric vermin were gigantic, the size of birds. But despite their size, cockroaches never ruled prehistoric land, and that's good news, am I right? No, something much more fascinating was roaming Pangaea. The now extinct ancestor of primitive mammals, Dimetrodon. This animal was as fascinating as it was terrifying. Encountering a Dimetrodon would be quite a sight to behold. This ancient lizard grew to 5 meters long and weighed 225 kilograms. It had a large sail running down its spine. Scientists think this sail helped the reptile regulate its body temperature, soaking up warmth during the daytime and dissipating excess heat during the cooler nights. It would walk toward you like a crocodile and act like a total menace. Dimetrodon was an apex predator of its time. Watch out for a mix of sharp and flat teeth that would slice you open and grind you up. In the Middle Permian period, other mammal-like reptiles took over the planet. Therapsids. They had strong jaws with sharp teeth and a somewhat upright stance thanks to their legs being situated underneath their bodies. Therapsid reptiles varied from the 5-meter-long, likely omnivorous Deuterosaurus to the 5 times smaller, meat-eating Lycanops. You could meet plenty more therapsids if you stuck around for another 20 million years. During the Middle Permian period, Earth kept getting hotter. The average global temperature on Pangaea grew to about 25 degrees Celsius, and volcanoes were spitting greenhouse gases out into the atmosphere. Due to the changing climate, sea levels were shifting, but marine life found ways to thrive. If you were to take a dip in the prehistoric superocean, you'd be swimming alongside ancient sharks and bony primitive fish. Many more complex marine species came and went as the environment kept changing. In the late Permian period, you could have a friendly encounter with another reptile, Lystrosaurus. These looked like a cross between a lizard and a pig, but unlike all the scary prehistoric monsters out there, Lystrosaurus was a herbivore. It was just 1 meter long and had powerful front legs for burrowing. Soon, another cute mammal-like lizard evolved, the cynodont. The cynodont looked like a giant rodent. It was about 1 meter long, had whiskers, and fed on small animals and insects. Now, during this time, something bad was brewing in the air. A large amount of volcanic activity was displacing oxygen from the atmosphere. Scientists think there was as little as 10% oxygen in the air. Compare that to 21% today. You'd have a hard time breathing in that environment. And the temperature kept rising and rising. With an average temperature of about 28 degrees Celsius, this lush prehistoric world was turning into an oven. All good things must come to an end, and sadly, this period came to a particularly brutal one. About 252 million years ago, about 90% of all plant and animal life was wiped out. This tragic moment is called the Great Dying, and it was Earth's most devastating mass extinction event. Scientists still debate what caused this catastrophic extinction. Most theories suggest it was the result of explosive volcanic activity. As huge volcanic eruptions swept the continent, massive amounts of ash were unleashed into the atmosphere. So much ash that it blocked out most, if not all, of the incoming sunlight. And with no sunlight, global temperatures dropped suddenly. Plants couldn't perform their photosynthetic processes and died off. And without plants, the very basis of their food chain, animals soon followed. Things got worse before they got better. Because of all the carbon dioxide emitted during the volcanic eruptions, global temperatures rose again. And not just to where they were, but higher, much higher. And this caused the superocean to lose most of its oxygen. And unable to breathe, a majority of the Permian sea animals perished. Eventually, over 95% of marine species and more than 70% of land animals became extinct. If Pangaea existed today, in theory, you could drive from California to England, since they'd both be part of the same landmass. And although you may only think of Pangaea as just another piece of land, it would be much more than that. It's played an integral part in human and animal evolution. If Pangaea had not broken apart, you may not be here today. But let's assume it didn't, and that we survived and evolved to be the people we are today. What would the Earth be like? First, let's talk about where your country would be located. North America would be right here. Europe would be a lot closer, just to the east. Asia would be up north by Russia, and Antarctica would remain down south. India and Australia would be further south, connected to Antarctica. These countries that used to have hot climates would now be cold, covered with snow and ice. And those wouldn't be the only environmental changes. Regions in the middle of Pangaea would have lush rainforests along their borders. And as you travel further inland, it would become a desert. This would be due to Pangaea's landmass being so large. Rain, which comes from the ocean, wouldn't be able to travel far enough inland, leaving parts of Pangaea practically uninhabitable by humans and other species. And weather up north would be different too, with Russia being much warmer than it is today. But the weather wouldn't be the only thing that would change. On Pangaea, we might have less diversity of species. The species at the top of the food chain today would most likely remain there, but some of today's animals would not exist in Pangaea. They wouldn't have the chance to evolve. Fewer animals might make it easier to travel, and on this modern version of Pangaea, you'd probably want to do a lot of it. Luckily, you wouldn't have to go far. If you lived in Florida, you'd be right next to the Caribbean islands, Venezuela, and Brazil. You could visit all of these in a single day. And if you lived in Nova Scotia, Canada, you'd be driving distance from France, England, and Germany. Although this might sound like fun, a lot of countries would have new neighbors, which could cause some serious issues for some. Places like the United States, which used to have oceans on both sides of the country, would now have Africa on its east coast. If these countries didn't get along, things could get ugly. How much easier would it be to start a war in another country if they were just a short drive away? Transporting weapons, people, and supplies would all be faster and cheaper if certain countries were right next to each other. Or none of this would happen and the entire world would be more unified than ever. With all of us sharing the same landmass, maybe we'd learn to treat each other just a bit better than what we do now.
We often think of dinosaurs as some of the most terrifying creatures that have ever existed. But what if I told you that there were some ancient creatures that were even more terrifying than dinosaurs? Ones with dagger-like teeth, massive horns, and gigantic sizes that would put T-Rex to shame. There were even some insects that were as big as you. Let's travel through time as we take a look at creatures scarier and more dangerous than dinosaurs. Megalodons. Ready to come face to face with one of the scariest aquatic predators of all time? Meet the Megalodon. The name of this prehistoric shark literally means big tooth, so you can count on the fact that these were some of the most terrifying animals ever to exist, especially during their time on Earth, between 3.6 to 23 million years ago. Megalodons were the largest sharks and one of the biggest fish ever, measuring a staggering 18 meters long and weighing over 70 tons. These sea creatures were mythologically gigantic and dangerous. They had massive jaws that could swallow you and a friend whole at the same time, even without clamping down on you with one of their many massive teeth that were bigger than dinner plates and perfectly designed to tear through your flesh with ease. Megalodons ate whales, dolphins, and possibly other sharks. And if we put them up against the scariest dinosaurs of all time, they'd certainly be a contender for the most apex of all apex predators. Woolly mammoths. Okay, let's move on to a beast that our earliest human ancestors used to encounter thundering through frozen landscapes. Woolly mammoths. These colossal creatures were a testament to nature's ability to adapt to and thrive in even the harshest of living conditions. They roamed the Earth during the Ice Age from about 400,000 to 4,000 years ago. And then they went extinct. If they hadn't, who knows if humans would have gone on to become the dominant species we are today. Woolly mammoths weighed between 6 and 8 tons and stood at the imposing height of nearly 4 meters. It just so happens that they had gigantic curved tusks that were also nearly 4 meters long. But while their absolutely intimidating size might make them as fiercely scary as the dinosaurs, these fuzzy giants were herbivores. Lucky for us,
That means they wouldn't need to hunt us down for dinner.
Saber-toothed tigers. This brings us to one of the most formidable predators of the Pleistocene epoch, maybe even of all time, the saber-toothed tiger. These prehistoric cats stalked the land like silent assassins between 10,000 and 2.5 million years ago. They hunted everything from mammoths to mastodons. And yes, it's possible that an ancient relative of yours might have had a close encounter with one of the beasts. Saber-tooths weren't your average house cat either. They could be as long as 2 meters from head to toe and weigh up to 300 kilograms. Plus, as the name suggests, they had 2 massive and sharp canine teeth that resembled long, curved swords. These made them truly fearsome predators. They would ambush their prey and take them out with bite after fatal bite. Not that I'd want to be anywhere near this battleground, but these are definitely animals that could take on even the most dangerous dinos, like velociraptors. Early primates. Okay, this one might not send the same shiver down your spine, but if you look further back into our own gene pool, there are some intimidating specimens. Like this ancestor of ours. Look no further than the early primate known as Dinopithecus. These baboon-like primates lived between 500,000 to 2.5 million years ago. And even though they aren't huge by today's standards, at around 50 kilograms, they were one of the largest primates of the time. And considering that they would have had to compete with the previous mentioned beasts and even early humans, there's no doubt that these monkeys knew how to fend off other large predators. Elasmotherium. This next ancient animal might have the most beautiful and least scary sounding name of them all. It was known as the Siberian unicorn. But don't be fooled, they were not rare magical horses. Actually, they were an ancestor to the rhinoceros. And you better believe that they were big and had one very large horn protruding from their head. They were believed to have weighed around 4.5 tons, but that didn't make them slow by any stretch. They had long legs that allowed them to run across open grasslands at stunning speeds. And while there isn't any evidence of one in our fossil records, it's possible that their mythologized unicorn horns measured up to 2 meters in length. Glyptodon. From here on out, some of the animals from the past could seem a little weird. And in terms of a scary weirdo that might be able to give a dinosaur a run for its money, check out the armored mammal known as the Glyptodon. These were basically prehistoric armadillos, which, to be honest, makes them sound kinda cute. Except they weren't that. Covered in a bony, armored shell, Glyptodons were up to 3 meters in length and weighed over a ton. Their shell was an excellent protective shield from predators, but that's not all they had going for them. Their tails were equipped with a spiky club-like end that was a powerful weapon against anyone who dared step in their way. If an ankylosaurus tried to mess with this beast, well, yeah, good luck. Glypto would club him right in the ankles. Giant cockroaches. In today's world, cockroaches are seen as pests, but also as a symbol of how life can survive even in the grossest, least hospitable conditions. Well, their prehistoric ancestors took resilience to an entirely new level. Approximately 359 to 299 million years ago, these critters were some of Earth's earliest inhabitants. And okay, compared to some of the other creatures on this list, they weren't huge, but at lengths of up to 9 centimeters, they were large for their time and bigger than any roach you'd want to find in your kitchen. And while they may not stand much of a chance against dinosaur predators, they had armored exoskeletons that would have done a pretty good job protecting them. Yeah, good luck calling an exterminator on these bad boys. Pulmonoscorpius. Imagine a scorpion. Okay, you're already running away screaming, but brace yourself for something even worse. A scorpion with a tail that's bigger than you. Yeah, that's the nightmare reality of the Pulmonoscorpius. Using this gigantic tail, they could deliver a deadly venomous sting. Not to mention they could attack and grab enemies with their imposing pincers. With most dinosaurs, you need to worry about confronting a towering beast with massive teeth, but with this giant scorpion, you need to worry about all that and the potential that they could poison you. Yikes! Any creature that coexisted with them about 300 million years ago would have been best to steer clear of these killer scorpions. Okay, these are a lot of terrifying creatures, but would they have actually stood a chance against some of the most fearsome dinosaurs? Which ones were those again? Well, that's a story for another What If.